Hello everyone. We are delighted to welcome you yet again to our monthly edition of BookKey. In BookKey, we bring to you top book recommendations under 5 different categories that cater to the tastes of a large audience. These categories are Spotlight, where we discuss recently published books that are informative as well as insightful. Hidden Gem, where we unravel to you rare gem of books lost in the annals of time. The Classic Vault, where we look at the evergreen classics which never lose relevance. The Untold, where we lift the wheel on lesser-known stories and facts about popular books and authors. Top 5, where we suggest to you 5 of the best reading choices from the current bestsellers. Since more than a year, the world has been battling unforeseen and unprecedented challenges from the coronavirus pandemic. Countries have been mired in chaos, trying to grapple with the situation through disaster management strategies and healthcare emergencies. The pandemic has affected one and all in some or the other way and has left us with a myriad of unanswered questions. Thankfully, in the last few months, a spate of books which answer most of these basic questions have been published, and for our very first section, Spotlight, we have shortlisted 2 of the best books from among these to offer our readers at least some clarity in these uncertain times. The first book under this section is COVID-19, Separating Fact from Fiction by Anirban Mahapatra, 4.6 out of 5 stars on Amazon and 4.4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Number 1 bestseller in infectious diseases on Amazon, published by Penguin in February 2021. In this meticulously researched book, Anirban Mahapatra demystifies the virus and offers us a historical perspective on the pandemic. He charts the scientific progress made in understanding how the virus infects us and how we fight back. He attempts to answer questions that have plagued us since early 2020, when our lives were upended by the deadly virus. Where did this virus, first called the novel coronavirus and later SARS coronavirus 2, come from? Did we see it coming? If so, why weren't we better prepared for it? How lethal is it really? How can we protect ourselves from it? How will the pandemic end? What will life be like once it's over? The author also looks at social tensions the pandemic has uncovered. In doing so, he offers us a clarity that enables us not only to understand the far-reaching impact of the virus, but also provides us the much required courage to live with it until it can be eradicated. Mahapatra dedicates an entire chapter to drawing parallels with previous pandemics while referring to other infectious diseases and RNA viruses. He states that pandemics are like snowflakes in that no two are completely alike, and comparisons with prior pandemics will only take us so far. The answer to whether the world could have predicted the occurrence of a pandemic like COVID-19, in Mahapatra's estimation, is unequivocally yes. He states, many experts did predict such a pandemic and our response could have been better. He mentions in his book that some countries that had prior experience with SARS have so far done relatively well. In the context of the future, Mahapatra covers many issues, from studying the impact of COVID-19 to adapting to a new world to being prepared for the next big pandemic. Mahapatra says he was compelled to write this book because he noticed a vacuum of information in the early months of the pandemic. Additionally, he felt this was an opportunity to provide practical information about how people can protect themselves and how the COVID-19 vaccines were developed and how they work. Dr. Anirban Mahapatra is an assistant director and publisher at the American Chemical Society, where he has been since 2007. He has been involved in science and scientific publishing for over 2 decades. He has written about numerous health and biology-related topics, including cancer, neuroscience, and infectious diseases. He holds a PhD in microbiology from the Ohio State University. The cost of the Kindle edition is Rs. 270. While our first book under Spotlight broadly discusses the nuances of a pandemic, our next suggestion in this section discusses the opportunities that stem from such an event. The second book we recommend is Post-Corona, From Crisis to Opportunity by Scott Galloway, 4.5 out of 5 stars on Amazon and 4.1 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. published by Bantam Press, Penguin Random House. In simple words, this book is a keenly insightful and urgent analysis of who stands to win and who's at risk to lose in a post-pandemic world. The book largely talks about how the pandemic will shape future business environment and argues unsurprisingly that technology will have huge disruptive effects, both positive and negative, around the future of work. Scott states that he began the book with two theses. The pandemic's most enduring impact will be as an accelerant, and in any crisis there is opportunity. The greater and more disruptive the crisis, the greater the opportunities. Professor Galloway illustrates the first thesis with a metric. At the beginning of 2020, approximately 16% of retail was transacted via digital channels. 8 weeks after the pandemic reached the US, the percentage increased to 27% and it's not going back ever. 10 years of growth occurred in 8 weeks. The second thesis is illustrated with examples in 3 of the largest consumer categories in the US: healthcare, education, and grocery. In healthcare, the forced embrace of telemedicine offers the potential for innovation and opens a new front in the war against costs in healthcare. Similar to healthcare, the forced embrace of online learning could catalyze the evolution of higher education, yielding lower costs and increased admittance rates. And in grocery, the delivery to home creates more opportunities for efficient distribution, fresher foods, and inclusion of locally produced goods in the distribution chain. An expert participant and observer of the tech sector, Professor Galloway provides great insight into how the big 5 companies, that is Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft, that continue to take advantage of their size, strength, and lack of regulatory restriction, saw increase in their valuation. According to Galloway, these 5 businesses have turned world crisis into an opportunity by innovating, obfuscating, and exploiting, adding that industries become ripe for disruption when existing players fail to adopt technological change to improve quality and value, as it may threaten their core business. The analysis presented in the book is not academic but provocative. Combining his signature humor and brash style with sharp business insights and the occasional dose of righteous anger, Galloway offers both warning and hope in equal measure. Though the book is US-centric in its discussion of trends, it has a larger significance and the analysis can be applied globally. Scott Galloway is a professor of marketing at NYU's Stern School of Business and a serial entrepreneur. He has founded 9 companies, including Prophet, Red Envelope, and L2. He has served on the boards of directors of the New York Times Company, Urban Outfitters, and US Berkeley's Haas School of Business. In 2019, Scott founded Section 4, an online education platform for working professionals where he teaches business strategy. He is the best-selling author of The 4 and The Algebra of Happiness. Cost of the Kindle edition is Rs 404. In our second section, The Hidden Gem, this month we have an informative and a perceptive book, Vajpayee, The Years That Changed India by Shakti Sinha. 4.5 stars on Amazon and 4.1 on Goodreads. Published by Penguin Random House India, the narrative of the book focuses on the political challenges Atal Bihari Vajpayee faced and on his key initiatives in the strategic and economic fields during his first term as Prime Minister, which have had a lasting impact. The book fleshes out not only Vajpayee's political philosophy but also provides an insider's account of how the former PM thought and worked. The book recounts how, devoid of any political pedigree or patronage, Vajpayee was able to harness his diplomatic acumen to transform India's relations with the United States, which had long been marred in misunderstandings rooted in the Cold War, and how his calculated decisions led to key strategic and economic policy achievements. The most illuminating chapter of the book is on the nuclear test, where Sinha details the Pokhran exercise, the American duplicity vis-a-vis India and Pakistan, and how the superpower that time knelt towards China to bend India. The book also vividly describes the hectic behind-the-scenes action when the Kargil War broke out, and how India initially didn't realize what a serious situation it had on its hands. Sinha narrates, to illustrate how ill-informed or inadequately informed we still were in the last days of May, just when Vajpayee was telling India that the situation was more serious than previously expected, we were offering the Mujahideen a safe passage. This was not because India was uncertain and wanted an early end to conflict, but because it was expected that the Mujahideen would not have the stomach for a long fight. Thus, while on one hand it was realized that the situation was serious, it was still unclear as to how serious it would get. Unfortunately, the Pakistanis saw it as a sign of our innate defensiveness, and the point of providing a safe passage was rightly not pursued by us. Slowly, the tide would change as the army and the air force would get their act together by marshalling their resources and adjusting the battle plans to suit the geography of the high-altitude war they were fighting. What makes this book a credible read is that Sinha is very objective in his account and does not shy away in putting on record where he thinks the former PM went wrong. Two aspects of the book need special mention to establish that Sinha is no hagiographer but an objective chronicler of times. Writing about the trust vote which the Vajpayee government needed to win in 1998, he says, the Vajpayee government had also got 2 Anglo-Indians nominated to the Lok Sabha as allowed by the constitution, but before the government could win the confidence of the House. Even I was surprised that President Narayanan had gone along with this step, since it effectively added 2 MPs to the ruling side. In another instance, where certain decisions related to corruption cases pertaining to Jayalalitha were taken to save the government, Sinha writes, while politics is not about ethical behavior, however desperate the circumstances, this was a cynical move that neither enhanced Vajpayee's image nor in the final analysis prolonged the life of his government. Even if it was Vajpayee acting on legal advice, it was not a happy occasion. The book also recounts the pulls and pressures of various allies like Jayalalitha, Mamata Banerjee, Chandrababu Naidu, Naveen Patnaik, Nitish Kumar, etc. The chapters on the events leading to the formation of the government by Vajpayee and the various demands and antics of coalition partners, both before and after government formation, make for hilarious reading. The most interesting part is that all regional coalition partners wanted Vajpayee to dismiss the governments in their respective states led by opposition parties as a prize for supporting him. The reason Sinha's account needs to be lauded is that it creates a record of the times that help build contemporary history, the learnings from which are extremely pertinent today. For the generation who lived and saw Vajpayee's time, the book serves as a good lesson not to forget the limitations a rickety coalition government imposes on a good leader. And for the millennials, it brings an equally important lesson that in order to criticize the present, do not idealize the past. Shakti Sinha first got to know Vajpayee in 1980 and worked with him very closely for 3.5 years in the 1990s as secretary to the leader of the opposition in 1996-97 and as his private secretary in 1998-99. He was also the director of the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library. He is a distinguished fellow at the India Foundation and is currently serving as the honorary director of the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of Policy Research and International Studies, MS University. The cost of the Kindle edition is Rs. 388. In our third section, The Classic Vault, the first book that we recommend is a soul-stirring and an enriching read which is also a #1 bestseller across 3 categories: classic fiction, politics and military history on Amazon. The book is Man's Search for Meaning, the classic tribute to hope from the Holocaust by Viktor E. Frankl, 4.5 out of 5 stars on Amazon and 4.4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and is published by RH UK, exported edition. Man's Search for Meaning, the author's memoir, has riveted generations of readers with its descriptions of life in Nazi death camps and its lessons for spiritual survival. A prominent Viennese psychiatrist before the war, Victor was uniquely able to observe the way that he and other inmates coped with the experience of being in Auschwitz Nazi camp. He noticed that it was the men who comforted others and who gave away their last piece of bread who survived the longest, and who offered proof that everything can be taken away from us except the ability to choose our attitude in any given set of circumstances. The sort of person the prisoner became was the result of the inner decision and not of camp influences alone. Only those who allowed their inner hold on their moral and spiritual selves to subside eventually fell victim to the camp's degenerating influence, while those who made a victory of those experiences turned them into an inner triumph. Between 1942 and 1945, Victor labored in 4 different camps, including Auschwitz, while losing everything he had, including his loved ones. There were many times when he wanted to give up, and Victor and his fellow prisoners had to endure atrocities that many of us cannot even imagine. But throughout the book, Victor speaks deeply about his own why and pursuit of meaning, which helped him endure his difficult circumstances. Victor came to believe that man's deepest desire is to search for meaning and purpose. At the heart of his theory, known as logotherapy, is a conviction that the primary human drive is not pleasure, but the pursuit of what we find meaningful. This outstanding work offers us all a way to transcend suffering and find significance in the art of living. Man's Search for Meaning has become one of the most influential books in America. It continues to inspire us all to find significance in the very act of living. At the time of Victor's death in 1997, Man's Search for Meaning had sold more than 10 million copies in 24 languages. A 1991 reader survey for the Library of Congress that asked readers to name a book that made difference in your life found Man's Search for Meaning among the 10 most influential books in America. With its descriptions of life in Nazi death camps, it's certainly a difficult and painful read, but the lessons for spiritual survival are deeply profound, which you can apply to your life. The essence of the book is delivered in this singular quote from the book. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. The author was born in 1905 and was a Viennese psychiatrist and neurologist who developed the theory of logotherapy. Logotherapy is a type of existential analysis. He was a student of the University of Vienna, where he studied medicine, focusing on the subjects of suicide and depression. Although he was influenced by Alfred Adler and Sigmund Freud, his work in the field of psychiatry was very different from theirs. He has won many illustrious awards in his time. He passed away on September 2nd, 1997. Cost of the Kindle edition is Rs. 145. The next book under this section we recommend, Nudge, Improving Decisions About Health, Wealth and Happiness, authored by the winner of the 2017 Nobel Prize in Economics, Richard H. Thaler and Cass R. Sunstein. Published by Penguin UK, this book is the #1 bestseller in microeconomics on Amazon and takes a revelatory look at how we make decisions. 4.3 out of 5 stars on Amazon and 3.8 on Goodreads. Nudge offers an engaging and insightful tour through the evidence that most human beings don't make decisions in the way often characterized in elementary economic textbooks, along with a rich array of suggestions for enabling many of us to make better choices, both for ourselves and for the society. Every day we make decisions about the things that we buy or the meals that we eat, about the investments we make or our children's health and education, even the causes that we champion or the planet itself. The authors say that unfortunately we are all susceptible to biases that can lead us to make bad decisions that make us poorer, less healthy and less happy. And as Thaler and Sunstein show, no choice is ever presented to us in a neutral way. By knowing how people think, we can make it easier for them to choose what is best for them, their families and society. Using dozens of eye-opening examples, the authors demonstrate how to nudge us in the right direction without restricting our freedom of choice. Nudge offers a unique new way of looking at the world for individuals and governments alike. Thaler and Sunstein argue many of the familiar arguments for why people should simply be left to make choices on their own, and especially for why government should stay strictly out of the way, have little practical force in many important areas of choice that matter to both the individual and to the rest of us. For instance, when overuse of medical care drives up our insurance premiums and our taxes, the operative question is not whether to bias people's decisions, but in which direction. The book draws its arguments from behavioral economics, which is a new area of research combining economics and psychology that has repeatedly documented how our apparently free choices are affected by the way options are presented to us. Richard Thaler is an American economist who was awarded the 2017 Nobel Prize in Economics. He is the Charles R. Walgreen Distinguished Service Professor of Behavioral Science and Economics at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, where he is the director of the Center for Decision Research. He is also the co-director with Robert Shiller of the Behavioral Economics Project at the National Bureau of Economics Research, and in 2015 was the president of the American Economic Association. He has been published in several prominent journals and is the author of a number of books, including Misbehaving: The Making of Behavioral Economics. Cass Robert Sunstein is an American legal scholar, particularly in the fields of constitutional law, administrative law, environmental law, and law of behavioral economics. He is also the New York Times best-selling author of The World According to Star Wars. Cost of the Kindle edition is Rs. 340. In our next section titled The Untold, this month we bring to you a literary masterpiece by one of the greatest authors of all time, Leo Tolstoy. We all know Tolstoy for one of his widely acclaimed piece of work, Anna Karenina, 4.5 stars on Amazon and 4.1 stars on Goodreads. First published in the year 1878. Anna Karenina provides a vast panorama of contemporary life in Russia and of humanity in general. In it, Tolstoy uses his intense imaginative insight to create some of the most memorable characters in all of literature. Anna is a sophisticated woman who abandons her empty existence as the wife of Karenin and turns to Count Vronsky to fulfill her passionate nature with tragic consequences. Throughout, Tolstoy points no moral, merely inviting us not to judge but to watch. Anna Karenina, which is till date considered as one of the finest examples of realist fiction, was regarded by Tolstoy himself as his first true novel. Author William Faulkner declared it the best ever written, and it has been adapted dozens of times for film, television, radio, ballet, opera, and stage. While the book has stood the test of time, few would know that the story is more real than fiction as it draws inspiration from a real-life event. The character of Anna is based upon a woman, Anna Stefanovna Pirogova, who was the mistress of one of Tolstoy's friends. When she learned her lover had been neglecting her for his children's German governess, she ran away and wandered about the countryside for days. She finally threw herself in front of a freight train. Tolstoy himself observed her autopsy the following day, and the tragic story of the young woman left Tolstoy deeply troubled and haunted for a long time. It is also believed by many that one of the main characters in the novel, Levin, is a reflection of Tolstoy himself. Tolstoy shared with Levin many of the same political beliefs and philosophical struggles, including a disdain for organized religion. Another poignant fact that is noteworthy is that Tolstoy found himself torn apart by a severe bout of depression soon after he finished writing Anna Karenina. This depression, which was melancholic in character, almost destroyed him and led him to want to renounce everything, including his literary creation and material possessions. Tolstoy turned away from his artistic work, declaring that art is not only useless but even harmful, and thereafter devoted himself to philosophical, political, and religious writings. These new sublimations later helped him to recover his health. Anna Karenina, a book which Tolstoy once considered as his first true novel, was denounced by him later as an abomination that no longer exists for me while battling depression. Tolstoy later published a brief autobiographical story titled A Confession, describing the author's struggle with depression and midlife existential crisis. Leo Tolstoy, born in Russia on September 9, 1828, is without doubt one of the greatest authors the world would ever know. He received nominations for the Nobel Prize in Literature every year from 1902 to 1906 and for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1901, 02 and 09. Tolstoy is known for his paradoxical persona and extreme moralistic and ascetic views. Later in his life, after struggling with depression, he became a social reformer and a moral thinker. His ideas on nonviolent resistance, expressed in such works as The Kingdom of God is Within You, were to have a profound impact on such pivotal 20th century figures as Mohandas Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. He died of pneumonia at a train station in 1910 at the age of 82, though he continues to stay immortal through his works such as War and Peace and Anna Karenina. Publisher is Fingerprint Publishing, February 2016 edition. Cost of the Kindle edition is Rs 52. Moving ahead to our last and final section, Top 5, we bring to you our picks from Crossword and Amazon bestsellers across different categories. In non-fiction category, we have The Book of Ichigo Ichii, The Art of Making the Most of Every Moment, The Japanese Way by Frances Miraches and Hector Garcia. 4.6 stars on Amazon and 3.9 on Goodreads. Number 3 in lifestyle and personal style guides. The authors have written another bestseller, Ikigai, which was one of our recommendations in the first edition of BookKey. Every moment in our life happens only once, and if we let it slip away, we lose it forever. This is the central idea captured by the Japanese phrase Ichigo Ichii. Often used to convey that the encounter is unique and special, it is a tenet of Zen Buddhism. In this book, you will learn to use all 5 senses to anchor yourself in the present. Every one of us contains a key that can open the door to attention, harmony with others, and love of life. And that key is Ichigo Ichii. Published by Quarkus, cost of the Kindle edition is Rs 199. Being Mortal, Medicine and What Matters in the End by Atul Gawande. 4.6 stars on Amazon, 4.4 on Goodreads, number 6 bestseller in internal medicine. In Being Mortal, author Atul Gawande tackles the hardest challenge of his profession, how medicine can not only improve life but also the process of its ending. Medicine has triumphed in modern times, transforming birth, injury, and infectious disease from harrowing to manageable. But in the inevitable condition of aging and death, the goals of medicine seem too frequently to run counter to the interest of the human spirit. Gawande offers examples of freer, more socially fulfilling models for assisting the infirm and dependent elderly, and he explores the varieties of hospice care to demonstrate that a person's last weeks or months may be rich and dignified. Atul Gawande is a surgeon, writer, and public health researcher. He has written 4 New York Times bestsellers, Complications, Better, The Checklist Manifesto, and most recently, this book. He is the winner of 2 National Magazine Awards, Academy Health Impact Award for Highest Research Impact on Healthcare, a MacArthur Fellowship, and the Louis Thomas Award for writing about science. Published by Penguin Books India, Kindle edition is not available, but the cost of the paperback is Rs 305. 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by Yuval Noah Harari. 4.5 stars on Amazon, 4.2 on Goodreads, number 1 bestseller in sociology. This book is a probing and visionary investigation into today's most urgent issues as we move into the uncharted territory of the future. As technology advances faster than our understanding of it, hacking becomes a tactic of war and the world feels more polarized than ever. Harari addresses the challenge of navigating life in the face of constant and disorienting change and raises the important questions we need to ask ourselves in order to survive. In 21 accessible chapters that are both provocative and profound, Harari offers us advice on how to prepare for a very different future from the world we now live in. How can we retain freedom of choice when big data is watching us? What will the future workforce look like? And how should we ready ourselves for it? How should we deal with the threat of terrorism? Why is liberal democracy in crisis? Harari's unique ability to make sense of where we have come from and where we are going has captured the imaginations of millions of readers. Professor Harari has a PhD in history from the University of Oxford and now lectures at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, specializing in world history. He has also authored the bestsellers Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, and Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. Published by Vintage, Kindle edition costs Rs 200. Next on the list in the fiction category, we recommend Nothing Ventured by Jeffrey Archer. 4.3 stars on Amazon, 3.9 on Goodreads. The novel heralds the start of the William Warwick novels. William Warwick is described as a family man and a detective who will battle throughout his career against a powerful criminal nemesis. Through twists, triumph and tragedy, this series will show that William is destined to become one of Geoffrey Archer's most enduring legacies. In our April edition, we had recommended Hidden in Plain Sight, which follows on from Nothing Ventured in the series of Warwick novels. If the storyline of this novel interested you, Nothing Ventured should definitely be on your to-read list. Published by Pan, cost of Kindle edition is Rs 286. The last book in this category is a book that will leave you amused yet thoughtful. A Man Called Ove by Frederick Backman. 4.6 out of 5 stars on Amazon and 4.4 on Goodreads. Number 4 bestseller in contemporary fiction and number 3 in humor on Amazon. The book is a story of a grumpy yet lovable man who finds his solitary world turned on its head when a boisterous young family moves in next door. Ove is a curmudgeon, the kind of man who points at people he dislikes as if they were burglars caught outside his bedroom window. He has staunch principles, strict routines, and a short fuse. People call him the bitter neighbor from hell. But must Ove be bitter just because he doesn't walk around with a smile plastered to his face all the time? Behind the cranky exterior, there is a story and sadness. So when one November morning, a chatty young couple with 2 chatty young daughters move in next door and accidentally flatten Ove's mailbox, it is the lead-in to a comical and heartwarming tale of unkempt cats, unexpected friendship, and the ancient art of backing up a U-Haul. All of which will change one cranky old man and a local residents association to their very foundations. Published by Scepter, cost of Kindle edition Rs 216. With this, we have come to a close for this month's edition of the BookKey. In our last month's edition, we asked you to fill in the blanks for this famous Shakespeare quote, "All the world's a stage, and all the dash and dash merely dash." The correct answer is all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. This month's question is for all our Potterheads. Name the 4 Hogwarts houses. Let us know your answers in the comment section below and we will reveal the answer in our next month's edition. If you found this video informative, give us a big thumbs up and share it with your friends. Also subscribe to Endeavor Careers for upcoming follow-up videos. We will be delighted to know if you found our book recommendations informative and interesting. See you next month with more such specially curated recommendations for you. Until then, dream, endeavor, achieve, and happy reading.